Welcome to the Low Production, High Value Show with your host, Andrew Jenkins. On the show, we'll be exploring the world of entrepreneurship, social media, and the growing digital landscape. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, you know that the world of business is constantly evolving and changing. And in today's digital age, it is more important than ever to understand how social media and technology are affecting the way we do business. That's why on this show, we'll be talking to entrepreneurs and experts who have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with you. From the latest trends and technologies to the struggles and triumphs of running a business, we'll be covering it all. So if you're looking to level up your entrepreneurial game and become more digitally savvy, then let's get started with the Low Production, High Value Show.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production, High Value Show. Today's guest is Ravi Nayak. Welcome.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, for a bit of background, you've been involved in the Toronto Board of Trade, now the American Chamber of Commerce, but your predominant day-to-day is with Capstone Networks. And for those just listening in and watching on YouTube, can you give us a sense of what Capstone Networks is all about?
Sure. So we are a management consultancy firm, and we focus on business growth strategies. And it's not just producing a business growth strategy, it's actually executing it. That's where we differ from most of the organizations. We also, so there are three components to our business. One is obviously business growth strategies and execution. A part of that is also stakeholder relations. So building the capacity for organizations to build relationships with key stakeholders in the industry from the public, private, and government sectors. And third is, again, a component of business growth, again, is creating specific curated roundtables or events that helps organizations project themselves and their teams as problem solvers, thought leaders, experts, with, again, stakeholders in the industry. Does that
When yeah, no, very helpful. What is the situation or the catalyst that brings them to you? Are they are they suspicious they have a problem? Do they know with absolute certainty we have a problem? Talk to us a little bit about how they come to you. Whether I recognize that you do your own business development, but even if you're actively prospecting as an organization, there still has to be a problem to be solved.
Yeah. So there are three situations wherein organizations come to us, and traditionally these are mid to large sized organizations. One is international companies who are coming into Canada and they want to land and expand, and their focus is Canada and eventually in the US. And so they're looking for, again, customized solutions and not huge teams, but people that they can really work with very closely. The issue in most of these cases is these larger organizations, they have resources, but they have limited understanding of how business is conducted in Canada. And so once they open up offices and spend a little bit of capital, in a few years, they realize that, they've exhausted their capabilities and they need an outsider to actually augment their efforts. That's where we come in. Second is Canadian companies. Canadian companies, again, a lot of them at some point of time are looking, they've again exhausted their resources, or they're just not able to crack specific sectors. And they're looking for maybe outside help who has expertise in these areas. So that's the second. And third is the regular, company who has a specific budget, and it's in their DNA to actually add another organization just to, again, augment their efforts. So we are huge, fantastic augmenters for specific business growth, business development efforts.
but just building on that augmentation aspect,
Hmm.
you're advising, you're coaching, you're not necessarily because they have resources.
Yes.
Those resources may have reached their limit of, I'll say, capability within the context of this new business environment like Canada or
Yeah.
Canada entering into the U.S.
Hmm.
But you're not doing the doing is my point.
Exactly. So what happens?
Okay.
So typically, what happens, Andrew, is that companies traditionally, they get into their silos. They have their sales teams, they have their strategy team, they have their supply chain team. And everybody works in a silo. And individually, each group has their KPIs, they have their strategic imperatives. At the top level, the senior management or the CEO or the president knows the collective mandate. Individually within these silos, they are operating in a very unique way, wherein they are many times they don't talk to each other. And what happens is that there is always a slip between the cup and the lip, and it's very apparent when they are trying to enter a sector. And I can give you an example.
Hmm.
We work with a large engineering firm. Uh, Amazing, they're massive, but they just could not get into the energy sector. Just could not, and they they spent about 3 years on that, and they dedicated a lot of resources to that. Eventually, interestingly, met their CEO just out of a conversation. It took us about 6 months, but now they are totally, totally entrenched. And all we did was get these three separate entities within the organization together, understand what their issue was and why they were not able to, overlap that with our resources and our relationship in that industry, and voila, they had their first customer. And now that is history because they have enough customers there. I
Hmm.
only wish I'd invested in that company.
Well, but that leads me to ask: Do you is it do you tend to do more of a, like, is the focus more, or at least um, preliminarily, to help them enter a new market, geographically, uh, or sometimes it's a new market geographically, sometimes it's a new market of industry type or product or service type,
Yeah. And that's a very
just
good
like the example you gave.
a good question, right? Entering a new market and entering a new sector have the same issues. Literally, almost, about 6 out of 10
Hmm.
times. The only difference is, the geography, or in some cases, the lay of the land, understanding the lay of the land. But otherwise, if you look in terms of the complexities of getting into a new market or a new sector, is pretty similar. So
Hmm.
I would say, in terms of our clients, and I'm telling you, we don't have a huge roster of clients. We can't manage so many. We have limited,
Right.
but we have 100% retention for the last 8 years.
Hmm.
And that is, it's split in the middle. It's 50% looking in terms of going into a new market and 50% going into a new sector. We recently actually teamed up, partnered with a automotive company, and they are basically looking into new markets.
Hmm. Well, when you're so high touch, it is hard to spread yourself too thin. Like when
Yes,
you're
exactly. Yes.
so embedded in what they're dealing with. Well, w- on the vein of entering a new market geographically,
Hmm.
um, talk to me about your experiences dealing with the different cultures. Before we hit record, for those listening and watching,
Sure.
we were talking about how, anecdotally, it's often talked about in Latin and South America. It's about building, social relationships first, and then we'll do business after, once we get to know one another better.
Sure.
My sense from my dealings in the U.S. In the past has been, they're much more, um, sort of practical. We're either doing business or we're not, and if we're not, that's okay. But we're not gonna. the focus is whether we are or are not doing business.
Yeah.
And then in Canada, we don't like confrontation. We'll try to avoid saying no, but we're also avoiding saying yes at the same time. And a maybe doesn't help. A maybe doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
So I just want to get your take on those sorts of scenarios.
Sure. And Andrew, I think in most cases, even before, when it comes a relationship, your first handshake makes the difference. The cultural differences between the East, West, North, South are so unique. But at the same time, believe me, it's pretty easy to read. If you can read body language and mirror body language with someone who's not from within your culture or within your geographical region, it actually works. When you're dealing with Asia, just a simple anecdote, when you're dealing with Asia, how you present your business card makes all the difference. If you don't present, if you traditionally go and, the way we exchange business card is, even though it's redundant, it's slowly getting redundant, we just hand it over. Whereas there is a specific way you actually use both your hands to give exactly that make, and that's a show of respect
Yep.
for and that's a cultural difference. And believe me, if you can't pass that test, any amount of effort in terms of building relationship is not going to work. So that first
You're
impression
already dead in the water.
yeah, absolutely. So that's one. Second is, like you mentioned, right? Relationships are important. When we talk to the Americans, I love the Americans because they say, okay, they're straight to the point. Or, in fact, people, if you deal from Israel, straight to the point. I love them. Why? Because they're looking, they've done their research, they know what they want. They're looking in terms of, they already know whether you can solve a problem or no, and they are straight to the point. And in terms of discussions, maybe two, three, they'll give you indication on the first discussion whether they're interested or not, or where the conversation. You'll get a good sense in terms of where the
Hmm.
conversation will lead to. When it comes to Canada, absolutely you don't do that. That's an absolute no-no. You don't straight come to the point. First, you talk about value, right? You build a specific relation. In fact, Canadians love to talk about themselves. So talk about that, research, and then talk about them, your client first. If you can do that and understand some of their motivators, they will start opening up. The
Well,
uniqueness
it
about
goes back to that idea.
well,
Well, I was just going to say, it goes back to that idea about people buy from people who know them, and people like people who know them.
yeah,
And so, um, we buy on emotion. And so, if and it, I want to suggest that this is done with in a genuine way. Just as you described, it's like you do your research. You're having a conversation in Canada. We're having a conversation, but you need to give them a sense of one, the value you deliver, but probably more importantly, to build on what you were saying, is that you are trying to convey to them that you know their business well enough that they realize, oh, they know our business better than our competitor,
yes.
and therefore I'm more confident that they can have the impact that I need them to have.
Absolutely. And so the approach is a little different when it comes to, say, the Americas, just within, if you talk to Mexico, Mexico is also a little like Canada. But the uniqueness is that, with Canada, if you can break into an organization, the stickiness is just fantastic because you worked hard in building a relationship. Based on that, you've developed a specific trust, and then you started delivering value based on the trust that has been delivered. And then guess what happens with that organization? They say, hey, I trust you. I know your expertise. I know your capability. I have another project. I know you may not be as good, but I trust you. I would like to deal with you. Can you do the other project? And get those, whoever you need to. All I need to do is deal with you. And so that stickiness with Canadian companies is just fantastic. And
Wow.
I like while they want trust, they're very trustworthy too. So it's a very different way of doing business. When you're doing in business in, say, China, again, it in China it's very transactional. So first, talk money, absolutely. Second is talk your product. Third is stock margins. That's how they are built. It's very transactional. They'll have about 5 questions, answer those 5 questions to the T, to the best of your capability. Value creation comes later. Economics
Yeah.
and profitability comes first.
No gray area, just
No gray area,
specifics, right?
which is again very unique as compared to Canada or US or North America.
Well, the you talked earlier about the curated roundtables and the C-suite. Do you do those? Because we've been talking about different regions. Do you do those regionally? And if so, what's it like? If you had to describe the differences of a CEO roundtable in Mexico or the U.S. versus Canada, or curious to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. And so when I talk about these curated roundtables, what happens is, and I think this is an opportunity that we found, uh, and it's based on our experience in the last 8 to 10 years. And that is organization. So if you take manufacturing sector, everybody has
Okay.
issues, right? And those issues are across all sectors. They could be manufacturing pins or they are manufacturing in aerospace. But supply chain and profit margins, which are so connected, are everybody faces that. And if you and when it comes to C-suite, they are looking for solutions. They are actually trying to learn from others too. So there is a lot of cross pollination that can happen between sectors. Or- But that opportunity is not available anywhere.
Mhm.
At the
Are you
same
even
time,
willing to put competitors on the same around the same table?
absolutely. In fact, because when it comes to larger organizations, a rising tide benefits everybody. That's how their approach is. So when
Yeah.
it comes to these specific solutions, they want to share but these are all in-camera sessions. They are not recorded, and we take away everybody's self. We do not allow anybody else to write. I mean, anything. It's all very closed doors. But people are very open, and they are very open to uh, discussing issues, learning from each other. And what we do is traditionally, because it's very C-suite, we'll get some very senior folks from the government involved, because
Mhm.
then that minister or that specific stakeholder, in case there is a specific ecosystem issue, they can take it back to the government and solve it, or at
Mhm.
least. So when I say curated, they are curated based on issues and specific mindsets.
Mhm. Well, and if you've got involved the government, then you're in some ways you're enhancing the potential of the collaboration between industry and the government because they are intermingled from a policy development and things like that. Um, I was involved in a virtual roundtable, and they had all the different stakeholders from digital senior digital marketing roles from quite disparate industries. But to your point, it was made absolutely clear that nothing was being recorded to give them a safe environment to ask the questions they needed to ask, to be candid in some of the things they wanted to share, and as well for those of us that were panelists, that what was shared with us by the stakeholders, was we were a safe audience for some of the things they wanted to share.
And I can give
And
you a specific examples how this worked, right? So one
mhm,
of those events, one of those roundtables. Think about. So I had a senior person from a railroad company, right? And on the same
okay,
table, we had, again, I can't name, but very senior person from the aerospace industry. Now, think about this. What could be common between a railroad company and an aerospace company? And what issues could they be facing? And as we started discussing, the issue came about from the railroad company about remote connectivity. They go cross border in long distances and through areas where there is hardly any connectivity. In some cases, they have to use satellite phones. And think about that. There's this train with 200 bogies, and the engine driver is alone, or maybe one more person. And in the
Hmm.
boonies, how do they connect with their operators, right? And so there came an amazing conversation, and actually, hopefully, they did end up doing business on remote connectivity. And what is aerospace
Well,
all about? It's all about reducing
well, just
latency in connections.
well, you surfaced like we all are guilty of making certain assumptions about industries and companies within it, and you sort of think like that this business operates in this way, whatever that might be, and then you realize, oh well, that's that's a problem I wouldn't have thought of, but when you hear it, it makes complete sense if they're crossing international borders. Like I think of a train in Europe, um, because you're crossing the continent. It's not so much present here, but yeah, like and it makes me think about when you get into the space of innovation and when organizations have run these innovation contests where they've crowdsourced. They present an issue
Yeah.
to what is referred to as the solver population. And so often, the solution to the problem that the organization presented to the solver population, the solution comes from someone or an entity quite removed from the industry or the discipline
Yes.
that's having the problem. And like NASA said, we need new space gloves for the spacesuit. And someone who was had some expertise sewing sails for sailboats was the winner because they knew when it came to a sail, it had to be thin and malleable but
Absolutely.
strong. And the space gloves had to withstand pressure from within because of
Yeah.
the sealed environment, but they need to have mobility for handling tools and buttons and switches and etc. And he he developed a prototype and won the contest. But
Oh, you
anyway,
bet.
I digress. But I wanted but that building on that example where you talked about a rail company talking to an aerospace, and you said earlier about so often many disparate industries have the same problems
Yes.
because of that perspective. Is that because you talk about uh, how you take uh, a sector agnostic approach,
Yeah.
and is it because of that we have more in common than we think when it comes to our operations and our businesses?
Absolutely, Andrew. It's a knowledge economy. And the more siloed you are, that much less intelligence or your problem solving capacity is. So for us, what we do in our team, we are not a large team, we are a small team, but very effective team. We engage in conversations not just on one sector. We have a habit of going out there into situations where people are discussing, infrastructure, transportation, food and beverage, AI, chips. It could be aerospace. What happens is we get knowledge, and you can get a lot of that through internet. But believe me, when you hear it in real from someone, it sticks into your mind, right? And it just stays there. It's like riding a bike. Once you
Mhm.
learn it, you will know it for the rest of your life. And so
Hmm.
That's where we build our sector agnostic capability. As long as you put yourself out there without prejudice, listen and try to gain knowledge, you will be able to apply that knowledge in areas where you really never realized it could be relevant.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins. Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com.
Are you, you brought up AI. I can't help but think when you're talking to a company that's more oriented towards infrastructure,
Yeah.
those are long-term investments, like
Yes.
10, 20-year sort of like um, uh, the vision is for those sorts of time frames. AI and digital transformations and or just dealing with I'll call it the ever shifting digital landscape is more like top of mind and there's a sense of urgency to it. Does that manifest itself when you're talking about some of your engagement where you're involved in maybe some of their strategic planning?
Mhm.
Are people foregoing 5 and 10 year strategic plans and thinking no more than three? Or are they are they're at a bit of a crossroads about how long their planning can be, um, just given how dynamic some of the marketplaces are.
And so to answer that, I would say yes and no. So
Okay.
I think in my experience that 5 year planning is there, but now it's moved on to a vision. And with that vision, the purpose remains the same. The components of how to achieve that vision continues to evolve. Now, if you were to talk about, in fact, AI has been present for the last 5 years. It's interesting that everybody talks
Mm.
about AI now, but it's been there, it's been developing. It's only generative AI which is new, right?
Right.
But
Yeah,
if
there's AI working in a bunch of things behind the scenes that we're deriving value from,
yeah,
but we may not be literally thinking, "Oh, I touched AI today."
and it's yeah exactly, and it's just become a soundbite. Previously it used to be
Yeah.
IoT, and then it moved on to so many other data analytics and whatnot, and now it's AI. But it's a very important component now, and then obviously it's evolving. The usage is also increasing, and it's increasing by the day, and it's literally doubling by the day. What it's doing is making you more efficient. While it's making you more efficient, it's also making your competitor that much more efficient. So your vision has to remain the same. But if you start having a 5 year plan, uh, the deliverable nowadays it's all based on deliverables and how close. Because otherwise, your competitor is, maybe if they have a faster execution, they are gaining ground on you. So I suppose I hope that answers the question. The 5 years is
Well,
still relevant, but
the
it's
way I'm thinking of it is that the 5 year vision is the what,
yes,
and the how. Organizations have latitude to change the how on how they get to the what of the 5 year vision,
yeah,
because we what the in a sense the tools and the services available to them now could be very different next year or 6 months from now because of AI and generative AI and so on. To your point, and I've said this on other episodes, I don't I'm not afraid of AI taking my job. I'm afraid of others that are becoming more versed with AI being more productive, more efficient than me or my company. So that's what I'm focused on. That I want to remain competitive, and
yes,
as well from the way we can infuse AI and related tools into our services to differentiate our offerings to clients about, well, we can do that for perhaps less, or just I can make every member of our team more productive, and therefore our speed to market, our delivery of services in a shorter time frame, etc. Um, as they say, it's been said, AI is not going to take your job, but people who know how to use it just might. So, but anyway, back to what I was saying is that take of the vision is the what, and then for the 5 year vision, but what we do and how we do it in the over those 5 years because of the ever shifting competitive landscape. I think if I've got you heard you correctly, is companies have the latitude to experiment may be the wrong word, but try different stuff. Fail
Absolutely.
fast, fail forward.
And Andrew, let me just add, if you're looking at your company as a whole, and I'm talking about medium to large size organization, if you're solving a problem, there is an issue. If you're solving problems and adding value, that's where you become an expert or survive. The reason I say this is if you're solving a problem, and think about this, tomorrow someone develops an app, puts it on iOS or iPhone, your business is done, right?
Yeah.
So if you talk about organizations like say and Zoom, they are single product, they are diversifying, they are adding value, absolutely. But just think about that. Teams has taken over. So irrespective, larger organized, if you're solving various problems,
Mhm.
then continuously trying to add value, then you will do much better as opposed to trying to solve a specific problem and then making your solution much better, right?
Mhm.
Then you can be replaced very quickly.
Well, are to um, go drill down a bit on that. Are what are you seeing in terms of regions where
Mhm.
there's opportunity for businesses for expansion? And I recognize that this is the space you operate in, so you're not inviting competitors, but just more from the standpoint of just organizations in general. What geographic regions are growth opportunities? And second to that, because we talked about there's geographic expansion and then there's line of business or industry expansion. What are you seeing for geographic expansion, and the latter, the industry or line of business expansion?
So I think if you're again, it's a very large question. So this could be
Yeah.
a very general answer, right? Because geographic
Mhm. Yes.
expansion, depending
It
on
was a
what
very general question.
it's a very so I'll have a general answer for you. Yeah, if you're a Canadian company, and if you're I see this a lot. A Canadian company, they're happy to do business in Canada. They
Hmm.
should explore south of the border because buying habits, even the legal framework, the accounting framework is pretty similar. It's
Hmm.
just that the market size is 12 times ours. So and at the same, so the economies of scale can be just fantastic. The ROI is just there. So
Hmm.
if you're a Canadian company not gone anywhere, then go into the US. NAFTA or so NAFTA 2.0's Kuzma provides excellent opportunities.
Hmm.
But if you're a mid to large size organization, if you don't have Asia in your Rolodex, then believe me, in the next 20 to 30 years, you may not be existing because either you would have sold out to Asian company or probably an American company to be out. Asia is growing like fantastic, and politics. I believe the politics aside, if you
Hmm.
see what's coming out of Asia in terms of development, just take any Asian economy and look at the rate of growth, their GDP growth, and we are nowhere. Europe is struggling, so they've come to a capacity, and it's traditionally the stagnation in terms of the economy. Populations are not growing, populations are aging. If you take that same to Asia, populations are growing, young ages, huge aspirations. We are mature economies, they are growing economies. So I would say if you're a Canadian company, get Asia into your strategy as of yesterday.
Well, to sort of as a to bring it to a bit of a close,
Mhm.
for some further advice. Well, I'll come back to my closing question, but I wanted to make sure I don't leave this overlooked. Um, when it comes to a Canadian company expanding into the U.S., as an example, my understanding or impression has been there's certain industries that are more conducive to the expansion, like product, like manufacturing, automotive, electronic,
Yeah,
bicycles, whatever. But even then, there's often pressure to move the manufacturing overseas.
yeah.
I remember there was a talking to someone who was involved in a barbecue company that was based in Canada, and over a certain period of time, they moved their manufacturing to China
Mhm.
because, like, it, the writing was on the wall that unless they drove their price point down, there was no way to maintain margin.
Yes.
Um, but the other industry I wanted to talk to you about was there's only been a few examples of Canadian retailers who have entered the U.S. market and
Yeah.
thrived. I
Mhm.
think of Aritzia and Aldo. Harry Rosen made a foray into to the U.S. and having spoken to Harry directly, he said one of the biggest mistakes we made. They were just slaughtered because it's such a competitive environment.
It is.
So I don't. Going back to what you were saying earlier about expansion, if you have any other commentary to add about are certain industries more conducive to expansion into the U.S. Or not?
I would say, given our industry is not too diverse, we are good at food manufacturing, we are good in advanced manufacturing, so automotive, uh, and we are good in life sciences. And the fourth, I think, is amazing. And nobody, again, we talk to ourselves about AI and the ecosystem. We just don't market ourselves
Hmm.
well. If we can
Yeah.
stick to these four, I think all these four have opportunities in the US. With automotive, yes, let me qualify when it comes to automotive. It has to be surrounding EV or the new generation of net zero autos.
Yeah.
I think we have good
The
IP.
the new era of automotive.
Absolutely, that is fantastic opportunities. If you go the same old, you might struggle. When it comes to food, 100%. Americans love food just like Canadians, and there is a huge market out there. When it comes to life sciences, yes, our life, our healthcare ecosystem provides less market access, but sky's the limit when it comes to the US because it's privatized. You can go directly talk to hospitals and try to introduce your product, and they're very open to it, especially. And we are innovators.
Hmm.
So I think healthcare absolutely, but finally AI. There are so many of these companies, and we are so naturally aligned. If you talk about the financial ecosystem in New York, if you talk about the food manufacturing ecosystem in, say, Chicago, and also San Francisco, and the AI system ecosystem in San Francisco, and again when it comes to Austin or even Houston, there are so many
Hmm.
synergies that you actually can't go wrong. You have to take that effort, though. And you have
Yeah.
to be persistent. Don't expect success on the first mm, conversations. But there are we have a very good ecosystem where there is a lot of support structure built here and in the US to ensure that Canadians actually succeed. I was with the governor of Nevada yesterday, and he was talking about how they are trying to promote Canadian companies to invest in the EV ecosystem. Low taxes.
Sorry, the founder of what? The
So
founder of what company?
sorry, not the governor of Nevada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was basically talking about the ecosystem that they are creating for Canadian companies, especially when it comes to uh, EV batteries and the lithium loop. It's basically access to
Hmm.
rare earth. Small, medium, large organizations, easy to tap into. Again, there are enough, and Canadians are helping. President Biden's CHIP Act is helping, and
Hmm.
every investment abroad for Canadians actually creates wealth for us here because the intellectual property is coming from here. So the supply chain
It's
also
got
is
part.
very coordinated. So I think there are enough opportunities when it comes to individual companies, small, medium, or large.
Mhm.
Persistence and the ability to actually look into going to expanding to the US is what is needed.
Well, I wanted to ask you. You triggered it with the use of the word persistent. Something I wanted to ask you earlier. And I'm glad you brought it up again. So I was at a conference yesterday, and I was talking to some founders of some tech startups. And one of the comments that came up in the conversation was this idea that some of the new startups are not persistent. At the
Yeah,
first sign of like they have an idea, and the first sign of like, oh, my idea is not being well received,
yeah,
they'll stop. They're not willing to persist to test the idea a little bit further
yeah.
because they actually might they're too quick to turn tail and run. I'm just wondering if you've had a similar experience, if you've witnessed that sort of quick quitting.
Absolutely, it's everywhere, right? Persistence is it's not unique just to Canada. It's unique everywhere. Uh, and I'll answer it in two. When it comes to an entrepreneur, that's the reason only 1 out of 100 people becomes an entrepreneur, because that's only one person who can actually cross that line and wants to be persistent, give themselves a shot. And once they do it, they even if 6 out of 10 times they will find a way to succeed. 4 or 10 times if they don't succeed, they will try something new, but they'll always be an entrepreneur. So that's a mindset, the persistent mindset. Second, when it comes
Mhm.
to say business growth, business development, again, people tend to be transactional. Think about this. Everybody loves to buy, but no one likes to be sold to. And what's the difference? The difference between the two is the value that you create for your client. It's not about what it is that you're trying to sell, what it solves, what's the benefit. It's about what it means to me. It's knowledge economy. So even before you try to sell anything to me, I already know about it. It's all that information is there on the internet. Any you can go into the
Yeah.
intricacies, but what does it mean to
Don't.
me? And that's based on relationship. How do you
Yeah.
develop a
You don't want your
relationship?
time wasted.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so the more transactionally you go, you're just a number. You're treating the client like a number. The client also treats you as a number.
Yeah. You're just a line item in accounts payable.
Once,
Well, and
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I can give you
Well, I was just
example. I try to, and we were in discussions. I've always wanted this specific client. Uh, I can't disclose again the sector only
yeah, that's
because
fine.
they're large and they
Go
are
ahead.
pretty monopolistic. And
Say what you can.
uh, and
Mm.
they liked me, but it took me 6 years. And 6 years was just giving them value, providing them value. Think about this: treating every relationship as a bank account. You have to
Mm.
deposit first, only then can you withdraw. And what do you deposit?
Mhm.
The only thing that you deposit is value, 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 value. Eventually, you have a good set of values deposited in your bank so that you can start taking a withdrawal. And and it takes some time. So this company that I was dealing with, it took me 6 years. But in 6 years, after 6 years, it's literally a fantastic deal, and it's only growing. And like I've given you the previous example, they come to you, they know you, they have trust you, and now that organization wants me to do stuff which I'm not an expert at, but they want to deal with me. And so what I do is basically I go to my partners, get more partners, deliver value or whatever they need through me. The deal flows through me, but
Yeah.
yes, I'm in some cases I'm using partners to
Well,
do that.
yeah, they trust you and have a sense that and acknowledge you can't. We know you don't have the capability to do this, but we trust that you know and can bring the necessary parties and partners together to meet our needs. Which sets me up for the last question I wanted to ask you, which is this idea of connections and partners and paying it forward
Mhm.
um, from a relationship building. Talk to me a little bit about how that's served you in your career with the Toronto Board of Trade and being on the board of the American Chamber of Commerce and your work with Capstone, and how and what advice, if any, you would give to others to follow similar philosophies.
Sure. And so I think the more technology takes over, people are looking for human interactions.
Mm.
So treat people as humans. Be sincere. And relationships take time, but they pay off tremendously. And that's what actually benefited us. And I strongly believe in that. Uh, when we look at prospective clients, actually, I don't have clients anymore. I only have friends. All my clients are now my friends. And believe me, in some cases in COVID, just because they were so senior that they were mandated not to meet people, they would we would go out for walks in the evening, that is after work, after 6 o'clock, or we meet on weekends, go for a trek and discuss business. And that is what helps you grow your business. Again,
Mm.
it's the relationships, and this could be for medium, large, small organizations, right? But you need to build, you need to focus on them, and at the same time, given that it's a knowledge economy, people need to know that they can derive value. So it's up to you to gain knowledge, be out there, try to be open, and that's what has helped us succeed, touch wood, and survive COVID actually.
But that conveying your thought leadership that you are the you know an active part of the knowledge economy. From your perspective, how do you avoid coming across as potentially too self-promotional, too self-serving, and more importantly, giving people a sense of you can help, that you are conveying thought leadership. I think back to like just some of the general philosophies about content marketing. Provide content that is informative, helpful, and maybe the better way of framing it is how do I, as a member of the knowledge economy, convey to prospective clients that I'm a resource rather than I'm selling something.
Yes, and it's a tricky question to answer, and it's not easy to do, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to put bread on your table, and all your employees, and a lot of them depend on you, right? So sales does matter, but how do
Mhm.
you do that? And that's where when I talk about value, it's not value related to just our capabilities,
Mm.
and that value may not be related to the services that we actually provide. So again, to give you an example, we are not masters of logistics freight management. And during COVID, this company was paying anywhere between, the container costs went from $1,600 in some cases to $25 to $30,000 a container, right? And especially when the Suez Canal was blocked, and there was this huge lineup of ships, which created huge damage to supply chain into North America. That's when I talked to one of my clients and I said, what could be the consequences of that issue at Suez Canal, and that they need to start preparing for the next 3 years and not for the next 6 months, which was what the industry was suggesting. It
The
did
dominoes.
tremendous benefit for that organization. And I didn't solve anything for them. I just, based on my understanding of a little bit of the business, I created value. They discussed it internally. They actually hedged their container costs into the future, and not for 6 months, but actually for next 2 years. And they benefit tremendously. And guess what? That organization, which is a large infrastructure firm, uh, continues to do business in various areas for me. They bought
Hmm.
PPEs from me at one point in time. Can you imagine? Again, we are not experts in PPEs. Yes,
Right, but to your point, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about um, you've built up enough level of trust
yes,
that you know I don't know if I ever have the answer, but I still want to ask him first.
yes,
Uh, and he can probably take it from there. And your example about the shipping containers, I know someone who sells high end. They're essentially toys and figurines, but they had a container that was stuck in transit. It was cheaper to leave the container sitting where it was and waiting for the price of shipping to come down,
yes.
because they to expedite the shipping would have meant just a complete loss. And so they're
Oh,
like, we're better off to sitting tight,
absolutely. I mean,
which
yes.
is a strange situation to be in, but that was their circumstance. So, well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your time. Really, really do appreciate it. And, um, I look forward to sharing the episode for people that are interested in navigating global expansion and heeding the advice that you've shared. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.